Why this town will block Mount Fuji from tourists. You've probably seen this picture, or maybe this picture, or this one, but have you seen this one? Konbinis are a staple of Japan, the 7-Eleven and Family Mart, but this Lawson is probably the most photographed and famous store. But this is about to change. You see, officials at the popular town of Kawaguchiko, where the store is located, will construct a mesh net to detract visitors. An 8-foot high, 20-meter long obstruction to tourists and influencers that will block out the famous view of Mount Fuji. So how did this happen? What is the problem? Who is at fault? And is this the solution? Plus, I'll be giving you my top tips for getting the most out of your future trip to this area. There was a day when Japan didn't have any convenience stores. In fact, it wasn't until 1973 that Toshifumi Suzuki founded a company that would operate the 7-Eleven convenience store chain in Japan. Inspired by a trip to the USA and the inconveniences of small local shops in Japan, his approach to introduce products like rice balls and installing ATMs revolutionized Japanese retail and influenced the rise of similar convenience store chains, including the first Lawson store in the prefecture of Osaka. And the rest is history. So, what is the problem? Search for the hashtag Mount Fuji and you'll find over 679,000 posts listed on Instagram. With a little scrolling, you'll soon find posts showing the Lawson store. Narrow the search to include the hashtag Lawson and you'll see dozens of Instagram users posing in the same spot in the area famous for the uniquely Japanese store with one of the most recognizable mountains in the world and Japanese symbols in the background. So, you can imagine what this might lead to. People going to great lengths to get their own version of the photo, overcrowding outside the store, spilling out onto the road, parking without permission, leaving trash behind, or even climbing onto the roof of a nearby dental clinic in hopes of a better vantage point for the perfect photo. The fact is that this location has spread on social media as a spot that is very Japanese and has made it the popular photo location it is today. So, who is to blame? In March, 3,081,600 total visitors entered Japan, out of which 59.4% came from Asian countries, with a majority arriving from South Korea, which made up a staggering 21.5% of travelers, Taiwan, a 15.7% of travelers, China, 14.7% of travelers, and Hong Kong, 7.5%. 14.4% of visitors were from Southeast Asia, and only 21.6% arrived from Western countries, out of which 9.4% arrived from the USA. So, before commenting, just remember that tourists make up a huge range of ethnicities, and every country will have bad actors that contribute to the problem. It's not really a problem that belongs to one group of people, but rather the fact that when crowds gather, problems will follow. I have some first-hand experience at this location, and although I didn't see any tourists behave badly beyond the enthusiasm and perhaps not being aware of the road, I can fully understand how this can pose a problem to the store and the surrounding area. Checking some of Lawson's reviews on Google Maps clearly shows how fed up these workers must be. The staff here are the worst attitude I've ever encountered in Japan. She rolled her eyes and was very unpleasant because we took pictures of the store. That's what one user had to write. The worst Lawson I've ever visited in Japan. The staff are pretty rude to the tourists and are not trained to keep the store organized, wrote another. For full disclosure, there are also some good reviews too. This spot's reality is very different to what you might expect from Instagram or social media posts. And the truth is, this is what you can expect across popular places moving forward. Reality versus Instagram can be very different. Set your expectations right. Be prepared to wait in line to get the perfect shot, or wake up very early to try to beat the crowds. But is it worth it though? This is not the first time Japan tries to deter tourists. Just this year, an area of Gion became a no-go zone for tourists, with even a 10,000 yen fine attached if you enter those private alleys. I actually covered this in another update you might be interested in somewhere up there. And Mount Fuji, the most climbed mountain in the world, is imposing new stricter rules with curfews and entry fees, all in a bid to try to make things safer and deter climbers from attempting to climb the mountain without an overnight stay. And tourists are also being affected in less obvious ways, for example, by either being charged a tax to specific locations like Miyajima's Island, or with talks to added tourist tax in the near future. What do you think? My initial reaction is to think that blocking the view of Mount Fuji is going too far and that maybe they could try to build some proper view spot to capitalize on this. But the reality is that Kawaguchiko area is full of breathtaking locations with incredible photo opportunities. Some might include some crowds, but many will give you the view of Mount Fuji with less people around. Kawaguchiko is certainly one of the best locations to get your snaps and views of the Shy Mountain, which is Mount Fuji. And there are a few things that you can do to aid getting your perfect pictures of the mountain. Number 1, stay overnight. Staying overnight will mean that you have time on your hands to explore beyond the normal spots. Number 2, set out early. For the best photo opportunities, getting out early in the morning will mean getting some of the best shots. Traveling in the winter or early spring is also beneficial too. Number 3, you need to know that public transport kind of sucks. Buses can be full and not very frequent, so either rent a car or hire a bike like I did when I visited with a friend. It meant cycling and stopping many times along the way to admire the incredible view. Number 4, if traveling from Tokyo, book your tickets there and back in advance, and I cannot stress this enough. Whether you're going on bus or train, don't miss out or end up standing for part of your journey. Do yourself a favor and plan ahead. Number 5, check the weather forecast and act accordingly. I actually had 2 different dates booked a few days apart from each other with free cancellation, and by keeping an eye on the weather, I was able to choose the best day, because let's face it, you don't want a rainy day or a cloudy day to mess up your plans. Number 6, be a realist. You might not be able to see everything you want to. Number 7, take cash. Kawaguchiko is a cash first location where many vendors and restaurants around the lake will only accept cash, so make sure that you have some on you. Number 8, be prepared to queue. Depending what areas you're going to be stopping at, it's likely that you will need to queue. Whether it's getting the perfect shot of the pagoda, waiting for the bus or a taxi, an ice cream or the ropeway, it's likely that you will need to queue up. That's not to say that it's not worth it. Number 9, you might be disappointed at the pagoda. The Chureito Pagoda is one of the most iconic views in Japan, but the reality is that there will likely be crowds. Mount Fuji might be hidden behind clouds or a haze, the pagoda might be smaller than you expect, and the walk up is more of a trek. Although I did think the pagoda was smaller than expected, I was exhausted walking up those steps and the view of Fuji was crowded and a little bit hazy. I was still blown away by the beauty of the pagoda and the majestic Mount Fuji in the background. So I can only imagine how much more magical it must be on a perfect crisp day. So why will this town block Mount Fuji from tourists? Well, they might be able to take the Fuji out of the Lawson, but they can't take the Fuji out of the Kawaguchiko. Explore beyond the normal spots and you'll be surprised. Mount Fuji is one of those mountains that you simply need to stop multiple times to admire. Thanks for watching. Consider subscribing to help support the channel, and to support further you can also check my links, including getting a data SIM or pocket Wi-Fi, which I used extensively to not get lost on my Fuji trip, and check bus times and train times too. Stay positive and be a happy gaijin. See you soon. Bye. Check out this video that YouTube thinks that you're going to like. So if you're going to be heading to Japan, check this one out. It's probably going to help you plan your perfect trip.